Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery for the week of March 4th, Harshashar 2019. I am your host, Dusty Red, and with me as always,
Dusty White.
And we'll start with this week highlights in Geekery News.
March 8th, release of Captain Marvel.
And in music, we have a live tracks album by Dave Matthews Band. I'm a little biased. The release date is March 29th, 2019. It was recorded originally, though, June 8th, 1997. Along with music news, we also have Weezer with their new Black album. And, of course, you can't talk March without Hosier. His new album, Wasteland Baby, ! Gotta say that. Wasteland Baby! is also released on March 1st.
In TV news, you have way oncoming and cannot wait teaser of Winter is Coming. Game of Thrones begins April 14th. And then, of course, just recently ended The Masked Singer finale.
We'll be talking about that one a little bit later. And then for gaming news, we have announced by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, Pokemon Sword and Shield has been announced for the Nintendo Switch, which won't be until late 2019. And then, of course, which will bring us to Kingdom Hearts 3. While there's no release for the DLC, there is DLC coming, which ends this section of our news and highlights and immediately rolls into our topic. DLC.
Downloadable content.
And they're saying that it's supposed to be additional story and another game mode. The game mode I get, but additional story content. What do you feel on that?
I think that it fills a niche of additional information or additional gaming that is available for something that they've obviously done a huge amount of work for world building. But I know that there's controversy about any game now, basically, that comes out with this added DLC.
Well, and I am the part of that controversy. I do not mind additional features coming out for a game, and I do not mind additional modes and other stuff. But if you have story that is critical to the game as a paid content, that's when I go, no, I'm buying the game
my money.
I've already paid, and I have no qualms buying additional stuff, even costumes. Hey, I've played League of Legends. I've played other games where
you want to buy your Dolly dressies.
Yes, I like my bar. Let me play my dress ups. I've spent 20, 30, 40, $50 on games. A lot of times they're free games. That's the big kind of model nowadays. I mean, Apex Legends,
free to play.
Apex Legends and Fortnite and PUBG and all these other games they're free, but if you want to throw a couple extra dollars our way, we'll give you extra content. That's fine. But I do not agree with the throw a couple extra bucks our way and we'll tell you the story that's missing from these things, or we'll fill in those gaps. Like, maybe it's the old, now this is me standing on my lawn, yelling at raid guilds to get off my damn lawn. But no, DLC.
Gone are the days of your full-fledged Zelda and Link games.
No, because that's happening now. You could get, Breath of the Wild has been out for 2 years now, and they had additional content come out, which was much the same. I'm at that point now where I'm doing that, and as exciting as it is, I am still going through the same similar dungeons. It's the same shrines over and over. It's the same thing, which is its major failing, unfortunately. But I remember games getting a full release. A patch was fixing a bug, not adding releasing 7 more levels and 3 new costumes and this and this. Obviously, on one hand, I'm a fan for Spider-Man wants his new Weekend in Tahiti Speedo costume. Fantastic. Somebody's going to pay for that. Go for it. But to be like, oh, hey, we're going to advertise you fighting against Doc Ock and then release the game and be like, P.S., that's an extra $15 if you want to fight Doc Ock.
Right. Where do you feel like that genre came from? Do you think that games like World of Warcraft and EverQuest and most MMORPGs.
Well, it's funny you mention EverQuest.
Release that.
Well, the thing about EverQuest is that a lot of those games back in the day. Well, first off, you couldn't do full content. Like realistically, you ask when did it happen? When high speed internet was available.
Okay.
Because I remember the days on destroying laptops on Napster where it took 6 hours to download a 3 meg song and $2,000 to buy a new laptop after you
Ladies and
destroyed
gentlemen,
it.
I'm seeing more gray hair grow on his face.
Forget
as we
Napster. Who had
speak.
LimeWire? Anybody remember LimeWire and the computers that were destroyed there? But it's still a case of when high-speed internet didn't necessarily exist. You were still on dial-up or DSL at best. We're only downloading a little bit at a time, so it wasn't a feasible practice for games to just go, hey, we're going to extend this whole new level. Because you're looking at a gigabyte of information that would take, well, if you remember Windows stuff, when you first started downloading, it'd be like 742 days, and then it'd finally pare down to 12 minutes. You're like, okay. But before high-speed internet, yes, I got the gray whiskers are full grown today. Before a lot of high-speed internet, you could not do full-blown content that was downloadable. If anything, you either got it from Game Informer magazine and a CD of some sort, or you got a floppy disk that had some additional level or something, but you couldn't get that kind of information on the internet. To download a gigabyte of information would take you, non-exaggerating, 5 continual days of downloading at kilobytes a second.
Right.
Now we have we have systems that take seconds to download a gigabyte of information.
Terabyte. It's like
you
terabytes.
you get a terabyte of information in an hour or two.
Right.
So it's easy for games to make that as a crutch. Now that's the problem is that there's such a reliance and such a push to go, hey, this game needs to be released now.
Get it out the door. We don't care if it's not fully packaged. That's fine. Get it out the door.
It buys some time.
We'll push it.
Well, it buys some
Absolutely.
time because when a game gets sent for publishing, it's not going to be on the shelves for another couple months. So if I'm
or you even have beta testing.
Well, I'm squaring. Well, I mean, Fallout 70, Vault 76 or whatever was one of the big issues. Is Bethesda was known. And they're actually a good example. It's funny you mentioned that. Bethesda was a good example of being able to get away with releasing a game, like doing an announcement and then a couple weeks later a release.
Right.
They're able to get away with that. Well, now that tech has gone away, they've leaned so heavily on we could announce the game, release it, and in that 2-week span, 3-week, a month span of game going to advertisement, game going to printers or to the developers to get not developers I want to say printers to get it onto CD, to get it onto a DVD, to put it out there, buys their dev team a couple extra weeks to flesh out some stuff, to put finishing touches, that it become the first patch or the first expansion pack or the first whatever. You couldn't do that back then. Back in the day, they released games that were on a cartridge, and like
once it's
N64,
out the door,
Nintendo,
it's done.
Like again, my favorite system still the Super Nintendo system.
Mine too.
And when that was released, flaws and all, that game is what you got. There were some levels that were absolutely impossible. There were some glitches that you're like, hey, I walked through the wall. There's a level of it that's endearing.
Battletoads?
Battletoads was very, very difficult. That was more Nintendo.
I'm thinking in an NES, not SNES.
But now you look at some of the, especially when you get 3D gaming, because that's where you get most of your glitches from. 2D games didn't have that many glitches. Like, you had the flashing of the images, stuff like that. But when they started doing 3D games, again, you look at, like, Ocarina of Time for Legend of Zelda, there's a lot of speedrunners that use 1 million glitches.
To beat the game.
I mean, Dark Souls is a good example as well. Like, that game will take several hours to beat, but a lot of speedrunners will do it in an hour and a half because there's 3 major glitches where you stand on a wall and lean against a wall, and because it's 3D gaming, there's a lot of clipping and a lot of stuff going on where a thing walks through the wall, skips 90% of the content, and go right to the boss.
Man, and I remember in Super Mario 3 when you it was 1 where you could go up the platform over the pipes and get to world 2, 3, and 4.
That
was game changing.
They made it seem like a glitch,
right?
When it wasn't. Which is funny that you mentioned that too, because a lot of these games like Dark Souls and stuff, they could easily patch those bugs. They could be like, oh, we know that there's a glitch here that people could walk through the wall and speedrun this, but they don't patch it.
Right.
Is there a level of of like a wink and a nod by the developers.
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs. Like, it's a glitch, obviously, but if you fall down the stairs and manage to do a backflip in front of your friends, like...
Photos or it didn't happen.
I meant to do that. Like, you just play it off as cool as, like, you do a slip or something, like, yep, I'm cool as hell. I meant to do that.
Acrobatics, roll it, crit.
Crit 20, baby.
So, as we're on the topic of DLC, what do you feel is a good version of a DLC? Like, in your perfect world, what would be...
Well, I mean, there's sometimes you'll get the free DLCs, which is a lot of times free DLC to me is just patch.
Okay.
Like, that's their way
We're here to make that game better.
A lot of times they'll be like, oh, there's this free DLC. A lot of times it's a patch for something we messed up on, or it's a patch for something else. A lot of times you'll get a lot of bonus stuff in that, too. A lot of times those free DLCs will also be stuff that's already in the code or in the game files that can't be accessed, but needed to be cleaned up or needed to be fixed. Again, you have we'll assume a month. We need to do a little bit better on our research, but these topics that just randomly come up that we expand upon. So we'll say there's a month layover between, hey, the game is done, let's send it to our publishers to do that. Cool, it's gone. We have 1 month to go back through our game and clean up code and clean up any errors. So when the game does hit the shelves, we can immediately have a patch for it and immediately fix X, Y, and Z. It buys their development team an extra month or so, which if anybody is familiar with game development or anything else, it's not cheap.
Right.
Especially nowadays with the demand for high fidelity graphics and audio and full-blown 3D and a expectation of just... Again,
well, you have things like VR and virtual reality is becoming so much more advanced.
All the Oculus and stuff like that. But even just stick with the games without that. Like, in human history, and I'm getting a little goofy here, but if you look at human history, like, video games is 70s, but realistically 80s. Like, there's text-based video games, air quote, in the 70s and early 80s, but really, you're not getting your, like, mainstream video games until late 70s, early 80s. So within 30 years, we've gone from a pixelated sprite,
Pong.
like,
Pong.
yeah, oh yeah, I'm gonna go Pong, like two sets of
Pong.
pixels hitting another pixel across the table, to Spider-Man whipping across a layout of basically New York City,
right,
and doing real-time fights and all this other stuff, to other games that have full motion capture of faces and expressions, to... Again, you want to use something like Apex Legends that has the capability of hosting 60 other players at the same time, running around and shooting each other in high definition. Like, we're spoiled. We are definitely a spoiled generation to see where...
I'm interested to see where it keeps going.
Oh, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, one of the things my grandfather always said, too, when smartphones were coming out and before he passed away, he was just like, I never want to hear you say you're bored. When I was young, I had a hoop and a stick, and now you have a device that allows you to find any bit of human knowledge at your fingertips. And you look up and go, I'm bored. I will beat you silly.
I do wonder if gaming just in general for mobile applications, I know that's kind of a gap in my knowledge of things, but I'm wondering if there's a correlation between, hey, we released it on mobile, we need to have it out the door by X amount of time, if that kind of adds to that DLC type of, hey, just make it look good for the first 20 or 30 minutes of quote-unquote game time.
Well, I mean...
And we'll just keep patching more through.
Let's look at the obvious game that both you and I play. Pokemon Go.
True.
When Pokemon Go first came out, you want to talk about gaming advancements using augmented reality, which is pretty exciting. You could do a lot with the concepts of, this is what you see, now this is what you don't see. I mean, I told you the time I tried to get my dad into Pokemon Go because he had just... unfortunately, he suffered a stroke. He was very lucky, and the medical profession was able to take care of him, and he had brain surgery, and they removed a clot, and recovery was a little slow, but he's doing well. And he needed to go out more and he needed to exercise more. And to give you an idea of the sense of humor that I've developed was I tried to introduce him to Pokemon Go and went, hey, like, go out and go and chase down these things and go to these stops and get your movement going on. And he looked at me.
Find these pocket monsters.
Yeah, and he looked at me without batting an eye, straight-faced, and went, I don't need a phone to see invisible monsters. Okay, Dad, I got it. Okay, cool. But using Pokemon as an example of game development, we all felt that Pokemon Go originally was released a little too soon. They're riding on the hype. They're riding on a lot of the DS stuff that was the Nintendo DS and that other stuff. And was like, hey, we're using Ingress, which used a lot
Here's the platform.
Here's the platform. Here's the information that was already submitted by users for years beforehand. We're going to release this game. And so they released the game. And it's very unfinished. And not only just they used Gen 1, which I got. They used the Generation 1 monsters, the original 109
They're
Pokemon.
playing off nostalgia. There's a bigger group of people that have a heartstring for those characters.
Sure. That's what our podcast is about, is that nostalgia factor. But the game itself didn't have trading, didn't have battles against other players, didn't have a real gym system going on, didn't have a lot of stuff to it.
They had the plans.
They
just didn't have the technology at that point.
Well, no, they had the technology. The problem is they didn't have time. It was a very unfinished game, and so they spit it out because there's money involved. There's a lot of money and a lot of dealing going on. And went, hey, here's the game. It's good. And so they did have some 30 million players.
Right.
But the game was stale and it didn't have expansions, anything else.
It didn't expand as quickly as they thought they were going to.
Well, and the stuff they were promising. They were promising trading and battling against other players right away.
And we're just now getting to that.
3 years later?
Right.
And it's just getting to it. So it's a very similar concept of you're forced to push and you're forced to get a game out, just at what cost? Obviously, Pokemon Go now is a trading system, a buddy system. You could walk your eggs and hatch them. You can walk with your buddy and get additional candies to evolve stuff. You can do gym battles. You could do full-on raids with other people. Like there's a much more vibrant system in place now than before.
Right.
But how many users did they lose because of the initial, here's our product, it's garbage.
Stay with us, grind it out.
But it is those players that stayed and paid. Like I've easily dumped in the last 3 years. I've probably dumped about $100.
But you've gotten at least more than that.
But I've definitely spent many a day. I have a college nearby from here that has a bunch of Pokestops.
Right. And
so I will go to that college, especially in warmer weather, and I'll do laps. I'll do laps around the college, and other players are there too. But for me, it's a good workout. Like I got my Fitbit going. I got a good running, not running, but good jogging, speed walking pace, going around the campus. And I'll do that for about a half hour. I'll get in 8,000 steps on Fitbit, get a little bit of a sweat going. I feel good. Okay. And that's my after work workout. Nothing fancy and crazy, but at least I'm moving. At least I'm burning calories,
right? Which
I'm drinking away right now. And, and good to go. So, but it took, they're called whales in the gaming world. A whale is somebody that will throw money at a game. That will be like, hey, this is a pay to play or a pay to win. A lot of people will call it. Like, hey, here's the content that's free. Go back to League of Legends.
Right.
Like, hey, it's a free game. You can unlock stuff. You get bits and credits for this. But if you put money, loot boxes is a good example. If you throw money down to get these extra special features, even if they don't affect the game. Cool, your fighter guy now has rainbow hair. Or cool, you unlocked a new version of this character.
Right.
I'm going to test any League of Legends listeners here I have Earth Day Warwick, which was Warwick in a manatee costume that became an April Fool's joke. But I spent the $5 on it when it first came out because A, it's funny, but B, because at the time I supported the company. The company was giving a free game. And to me, it's like when you go to a bar, you have to buy it first. You have to at least buy one drink.
Right.
It's your entrance fee.
Right.
Now, if I just buy the one drink and I'm done, kind of crappy, but maybe I'm not there to drink, I'm hanging out with my friends. But at the minimum, if I'm going to walk into a bar,
I'm at least
buying a beer or a drink to be like, I'm supporting the establishment.
Right.
It isn't about just me at this point. It is about assisting or showing support for this place. Like, hey, I'm taking your waitress's time. I'm gonna throw a little money down.
So that kind of segues into our next topic as far as what we feel is our gaps in geekery.
We've had a little bit of discussion ourselves off the mic on where we lack in terms of geekery.
One of my lacks of I tried so hard to play League of Legends. I don't even remember what the character's name was, but I know she just had a bunny outfit and I liked it. So
Rivian?
Rivia,
Riven, I think it is.
Yeah. And it was like her battle bunny.
Yeah,
it was
her battle
very
bunny,
a throwback to
Riven.
Playboy old school style costuming.
Mm-hmm.
Very cute. I enjoyed while playing, but I was awful at it.
Sure.
I was like sugar to the turrets. I was awful. Even having friends sit around, I mean, I enjoyed the experience of playing, but I was never going to get, like, I was never going to be like, okay, today I'm going to invest 12 hours into being better at this.
And like those games, there's a meta to it. This is the optimal strategy. This is the correlation of time invested to the time, like, to the skill level is pretty equivalent. Like, again, to piggyback off you on there, like, I've been playing Apex Legends fairly heavily.
Okay.
And I'm not good at it. I'm going to flat out say I like the game, but I'm beginning to realize that I don't like the game because I game to have fun. I like to play games to have fun. Maybe I'm just getting older. Maybe the fact that, like, I joke about getting older, but I realize that my Twitch reactions are not as quick as they used to be. I used to be really good at Unreal Tournament and Quake and all these old games. I'm realizing now that with Apex Legends, I don't have that twitch. If there's a guy, shoot him and, like, be accurate. I'm shooting, like Ray Charles with a machine gun, just hitting the ceiling. But the thing is, though, is the thing that I don't like about Apex Legends compared to, like, Fortnite and PUBG is Apex Legends forces you to, the concept of Apex Legends is you're dropped in very Hunger Game style of, you get dropped in, you're on a team of 3, there's 20 or 19 other teams of 3, so there's 60 players in this battleground.
Okay.
All these teams of 3 now have to get dropped into a location, scavenge for weapons and armor and gear and whatever, backpack to carry more stuff, helmet, armor. You basically are set with nothing to collect as much crap as possible and kill everybody else, while the map has a ring around it that if you're outside that ring, you take damage, and the ring slowly shrinks over time.
Got it.
All that does is forces all your players in a small spot.
Into actual melee.
It's actual combat. So games only last, even a long game is 20 minutes, because you're forced into that ring. Fantastic concept. Again, Fortnite does that. PUBG was one of the originators. I'm going to air quotes. I'm not 100% sure, but there were some of the originators of this concept. The thing is, though, is because Apex Legends forces teams of 3 to play, and I, as a not a very good player, logs in and gets put with 2 other players. I feel like crap when I am terrible. Like, all 3 of us go, and they're all like, all right, Alpha Charlie, Bravo, Mega, we're going northwest, 300 knots. And I'm like, looking at a butterfly, like, man, these graphics are awesome. Oh shit, there's a guy shooting at me. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm just not good at these games. And so the downfall is that. Now you get into some of the gamer negativity of
course.
I get killed, I die, and then you got the 2 other guys who are clearly a team together. Oh, gee, thanks, guy. Like, you suck, or why couldn't you do that? And so, at least with Fortnite or PUBG, I could solo play. So it's just
and get
me.
a little bit better.
It's just me versus 90 or 89 other players. If I suck, I suck, and I just die.
But it's just you.
I'm not ruining anybody else's fun. Whereas when I'm forced into a team situation, I feel bad, and it becomes not fun. Where I'm like, now at this point, I'm dying, which I get a laugh out of. I don't care. You can kill me all day long. But when my team suffers because of it, I legitimately stop having fun. It gets to a point of, man, like, and obviously I could get better by playing more.
Right.
But now we dance that level of how much investment do I want to put in? How much time do I want to dump into this to get good at this one skill?
Right.
I've got other things to do. So it feels like that the investment is high, where I either have to get really good at this or not play it at all for fear of ruining other people's excitement or of
Right.
their joy of the game, because now it's a 2-man team versus teams of 3. It's unfortunate. So that unfortunately is one of my downsides, shaking my old man cane at Apex Legends. I'm targeting specifically because I've been playing that, but I do feel a little bad. But because of its 3-on-3 on etc. style of game, you have a bad teammate, you're handicapped.
Right.
And especially if, as a solo player, I have a tendency of getting thrown into guys who are like, I'm like level 16. I'm like bare bones. And it's like, you are now playing against, guy who's level 93. And like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm apologizing before we land. Like, I'm the jump master. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What gun do you have? I'm so sorry. Apparently I'm Canadian. I am so sorry.
So, kind of going off of that, what are some other known gaps in your geekery that you feel like you have?
I'm bad at when it comes to movies. Movies and TV shows I do not do. You mentioned in news Game of Thrones coming back. I have seen 1 season of Game of Thrones, and I didn't even get to the good stuff. I didn't even get to the red. I didn't. Spoilers, but
It's been a while. I think you're okay.
I got a lot of that's the problem for me is I worked with a bunch of people who are big Game of Thrones fans. So they showed up to work on Monday morning going, "Did you see his hand get cut off?" And I'm like, "Fuck, what?" So I'm not a big TV movie guy. There's a lot of movies I don't watch. Maybe it's just the way I'm wired. Sitting still. I mean, you've made the joke before. Even after we do these episodes on the podcast, I'm immediately walking around and pacing off nervous energy and just energy in general. I'm a pacer. I'm a mover. I can't.
The thought of spending multiple hours sitting in one location watching a single story or a plot line, it gives you hives.
Now, admittedly, a friend of mine and I sat and watched all of season 2 of Stranger Things. Like, we're starting at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. and watched it until like 6 a.m. was one of the most enjoyable / grueling things that I ever did.
True.
So for me, yeah, I love music. I love games. I love LARPing. My weaknesses straight up are TV shows and movies. What about you? You said gaming is a little difficult for you.
Gaming is a little difficult for me just because I too suffer from I just don't think I'm good enough at it, and I don't get enjoyment out of being bad at something.
Sure.
So gaming, I've talked about it before. I was a button masher playing, Mortal Kombat with my brother, making shit move.
Player 2 syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I will sit down and watch someone play a video game and get just as much enjoyment out of.
So you get into... This is where we could get into really gray muzzle type territory of like you have people that are professional gamers or YouTube streamers. Like I'll admit, I watch Jacksepticeye. The loud screaming Irishman. I'll watch him or Markiplier.
Yeah,
I do enjoy. What is your take on that?
That genre of entertainment?
Not even so much genre. I mean, we both, if we seen Gabriel Iglesias kind of make the joke, and I'm going to blatantly rip his joke off here. Go watch Gabriel Iglesias' new and special on Netflix. But he makes a joke where he confronts his son and asks his son why he watches these gamers. And his son replies, "They're professionals." And he's like, I don't get it. Like, why do you watch these gamers?
You're watching something that you could go play yourself.
You go play yourself. To which his son replies, "Why do you watch football?" Like, they're professionals. That's what they do. Now, me personally, I can't do horror games.
Uh-huh.
I am very, very bad at the spoopies. I can't do horror games. And I've also come to the conclusion that a lot of first-person shooter type games, I get motion sickness.
Right.
I get sick. I could play a little bit at a time, and my secret is I will play for a little bit, and I will have to get up and walk away from my desk. I get motion, and it's actually a thing that they're researching now, is if you notice a lot of games now have colorblind modes for the vast number of colorblind people, which actually affects more males than females.
Interesting.
So I forgot the percent. It's like 1 in every 50 or 1 in every 20
I was gonna
males.
say we have 3 or 4 in our group, and obviously heavily male group. But...
Well, 1 in every X number of males that are like we'll just say 1 in 10, whereas for females it's like 1 in 1,000. Like it's an exponentially more
Bigger
common
statistic.
thing for males to
Interesting.
be colorblind. Because I'm colorblind and I get motion sickness, there's a lot of games that I can't play myself. But I will sit and watch some of these YouTubers play these games and comment on it. And because of that's what they do, because they're air quote professional gamers, I think they do have some good insight when they're like, well, I'm going to compare this to another game I've played where
Right.
maybe I've not played that game. Like, I am willing to take the advice of somebody who gets paid to play video games, and if he's going to comment on this game is akin to this, or, and again, I'm going to use Jacksepticeye. He went to school for game development and game stuff. So I'm going to take his word when he says, oh, wow, the visuals here. Oh, the water is so pretty. And he goes into a minor tirade of, like, how light oculation works and the filtering and bloom and all this other stuff to make the game possible. There's going to be a level of it that I'm more entrapped in going, I'm going to take this guy's word for it.
Right.
Like, this guy is a paid video gamer. But if you're going to look at it with the old man of why are you watching some other person play a game, you could spin it and go, because that's what he does, and he's going to have some sort of insight that we can.
And it kind of full circles all the way back to our DLC content is with as games are more and more expensive nowadays, even though you might end up with DLC.
Well, we're in a position now where the fact that games are still $60 to $70 is ridiculous.
Do you mean that you think they should be more?
They, statistically, number-wise, yeah. We should be paying $100 for a game.
Okay.
But because there's so many gamers, they're banking on the fact that will oversee their costs. Because there was some years ago when they went from $50 to $60 a game, there was a huge uproar. It's a minor jump in price.
This again, to circle completely back to our original topic of if you keep the overhead or the price low, a lot of games don't have a lot of replayability. You go through if it's a $60 game and you go through one single story mode and it doesn't have an ability to grow or have, again, DLC to it to bring about another story. Why do you have this is why GameStop continues to still exist. Because you buy a game, you play it for 30 hours, you get no additional gameplay from it. Sure. Why are you keeping it?
Well, and I think that's where developers get smart. Resident Evil 2 had a remake.
Absolutely.
Capcom remade Resident Evil 2, but the thing and the genius about it then, when I first released it, and the genius about it now is you learn how to reuse stuff. A lot of thing about Resident Evil 2, especially the remake, they built the level, which is the police station and some of the sewers and stuff. But they built this level and then added the game around it. There's 2 versions of this game. Actually, technically, there's 4 versions of the game. There's Leon A, Leon B, and then Claire A, and Claire B. So you take
I remember the 4-disc PS2.
Oh, yeah, you had to change discs over and everything. Oh, remember
Please
Metal Gear Silent,
yes.
Metal Gear Solid and stuff.
Okay.
But what they did for here is you get savvy. We've developed all of this stuff. We developed the level, we developed the monsters, we developed the characters. All this is good. Now we just have to make the story out of it, whatever. They did smart by reusing the level, but changed it up. So when you play Leon, you went through the police station. Done. When you play Claire, you run through the same police station, but some of the items were in different locations.
Right.
Some of the items were different.
Almost as if they're interacting with each other without knowing that they're interacting with each other later on.
But you take the game, you take the character and the story aspect out of it, and you look at it from a developer standpoint. You have a resource that's already you've obviously dumped a lot of resources into the map, like into the police station, into the sewers, all that stuff. You put a lot of resources into that. You want to milk as much of that as possible to save on your costs.
Right.
So you just have your characters go through that same maze at different points. So you're reusing the game. You're reusing your major resource, which is your map. Your major cost, your map. So you're reusing that by allowing the characters to enter that maze at different points. And then have enough of a shift to change the doors or change the parts of that maze in a subtle way to get more out of it.
Right.
So it's a very clever way of maximizing your...
So how does that go back? How does that correlate to what they, like, gamers in general now are, where's my replayability? Like, it's something from me
Well, being able to go through the
specific
same, being able to
for.
go through the same map 4 times is a fairly high replayability value. Like, you could go through that same map 4 times. I mean, again, we'll go back to Breath of the Wild while I'm playing.
But do you think the game itself was go through the map 4 times to beat that game? I'm more looking at it as I go through the map once. That is the beginning, middle, and end of this game. Where is my replayability? I don't have to go through the map 4 times to get the full story.
That's replayability, though.
But
no, you do have to go through 4 times to get the full
But that's
story.
what I'm saying. That's the difference between... I feel like that's the difference between what games used to be back then to now, where you have something like... I'm trying to give a good example because all that's coming to me right now are bad examples like Skyrim and Elder Scrolls, and where there's so many side quests that is where your replayability is.
But that is your replayability in the sense of the way you... I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean from your replayability. Like, if you're playing the game for the mechanics, again, Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, you could play... that you're playing those games for the mechanics and finding an exploration. But the fact that you could explore at your own whim is a big thing.
Heavy Rain. I just thought of it. Heavy Rain was a story. It was a good game. It was one of the ones that I personally picked up thinking I would like it. I had a hard time getting into it, but it didn't really have a lot of playability once you went through the main storyline, because it was very structured of go to point A, do point B, point C, and so on and so forth. But once you get 60 hours in, and I don't even think it would have taken you 60 hours, if you sat down, you could probably beat it in a weekend. But here's $60 worth. I guess I shouldn't complain because that's essentially a LARP weekend.
Sure.
But here's $60 I've just invested in this game, and now I've beaten it within 30 hours. What is the replayability of that game past that point? There is none. You turn it in and you get $10 back on GameStop.
Sure, but you could do that. I mean, I guess that's the thing is, like, how much are we demanding of our games? How much are we expecting of stuff? Like, we forget that the visuals of Heavy Rain were also impressive.
Oh,
are we becoming
gorgeous, breathtaking?
So are we discrediting those visuals? Are we discrediting the additional stuff? Like, I mean, you gotta remember, once upon a time, I was paying $50 to play a game with all pixelated sprites, running through trying to save Flammy. Wait, I'm going to leave a long pause for 3, 2, 1. Secret of Mana fans. But I was paying money for pixelated sprites and minimal visuals, but for gameplay. So realistically, do we ask the question of, are we allowing technology to replace that? Like that, I think that aspect has slowed down. I remember a point in the early 2000s where the race for graphical upgrades was insane. Like, everybody was upgrading their computer at a rapid pace because newer and bigger video cards were needed. Console wars were getting more and more aggressive in terms of the jump from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. The jump from Super Nintendo to N64 to GameCube were leaps and bounds technology. Now you look at the jump from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, there's a jump.
But it's not as graphically impressive.
It's still impressive, but not as exponentially as before. Obviously, we've gotten so good at making these games and motion capture and stuff that, yeah. But again, the fact that games have only stayed $60 for the millions of dollars that they're investing for music and visuals and gameplay and advertising,
right?
And we're still only paying $60 to $70 for a game, which is insane. Something you could look. I think Matt Pat from Game Theorist touches on that at some point in one of his previous episodes, of talking about the fact that we're only paying this kind of money instead of $100 per game. It's just they want to fight that as long as possible.
Give and take.
It's give and take. So it's just a case of we're going to fight that as long as possible, but now we have an expectation to sell X number of copies to make our return on it.
Right.
It's definitely a give or take on that. It's rough. I mean, I get it. It's not easy. It is definitely a very super hyper competitive market. at the same time, you're starting to see a lot of these indie games that are coming out of left field and just crushing it. Again, I cannot toot the horn of Team Cherry more than I have of playing Hollow Knight and not the new Hollow Knight. I want to say Hollow Knight 2, but technically it's an expansion, but it's a standalone expansion. It's its own thing. But
it's just additional story. It's we've invested in
it's
much
part
in a
two,
world. Yeah,
technically.
it's world building, and then we are just adding to it. So to kind of round out this week's episode, did kind of want to speak with you and get your feedback or your thoughts about Masked Singer.
Okay. I'm going to throw a big O spoiler warning here. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. We will be talking about the Masked Singer because it is finally done. We finally got to sit down and watch our final episodes. I can't say final any more times. I play this. Obviously, we were gone over the last week and a half or so doing convention stuff, and just it's not
Getting
just
it's
not just the convention, but then it's the unpacking and washing everything and putting things away,
Correct.
and then starting to do crafts for the LARPing events, and LARPing is not a one weekend thing. It is a prepare for the weekend.
When we do it, it can be.
It can
but
be.
At our level, it is not.
We make sure we look good, our weapons are good, everything's set. So, Masked Singer. So, we did see the last 2 episodes.
Correct.
Which had the one that narrowed down to the final...
The double reveal.
The episode of Double Reveal, which had
where your
5.
poor rabbit.
Rabbit got eliminated in the double?
In the double.
Yeah, he did get eliminated
He got him, the lion and the rabbit.
The lion of all people were super surprising. Again, spoilers.
Rumor Willis. Which had been in talks about a rumor, drink about being who she was. Like, there was a lot of hints towards her, and she was on the radar of who that might be.
Sure. That threw me for a loop. I didn't know Rumor Willis was a thing. I forgot that she was in Chicago.
Right.
I didn't know
she was also in Empire.
In Empire. I didn't realize she had pipes.
She
could sing.
Some of the songs, I do believe that some of her song choices were a little subpar, but when she sang California Dreamin', it gave me chills. She nailed it. And she did that as a backlash of one of the judges basically being like, she's not a singer. And she was just like, I'm going to show you.
I'm going to sing. I'm going to belt.
And then you were so sad for
I love the
rabbit.
The fact that the rabbit was twitchy and doing all the actions and reactions and such. Like, Joey Fatone. Fantastic. Like, I have 3 little sisters. So I am very familiar with the Backstreet Boys versus... In Sync Wars
versus 98 Degrees,
where I had always throw down and be like, New Kids on the Block was the shit before all of that.
If you listen hard enough, you can hear the hair growing.
Not on my head, just at the beard. So yeah, like seeing Joey Fatone not only sing, because we were like, damn, he's got good vocals.
Again, some of his song choices were spot on.
Some of the song choices buried them for sure. The fact that he was very active on stage, like they called it several times, that he is a performer.
Right.
He worked the stage. He was dancing around. Because we're like using Lion as an example. Rumor just kind of stood in a spot and she puffed her chest out.
Things were done around her and she was not part of it.
She stood still while things happened and she sang. Whereas Joey Fatone being
synchronized boy band group,
being an NSYNC and having to know how to dance and move, and like there's a level of difficulty that we don't give them credit for. Oh, boy band, we roll our eyes and this and this. Like, go run and sing.
Right.
Like, they're dancing, they're moving, they have to time their breaths with their steps so that they're not gasping. Like, it's not easy. It is not easy by any stretch of imagination. So for him to go up there in a mask, in a basically a fursuit.
And he even in a fursuit, and he even talked about it. He said that because he was in a straight jacket type costume, he suffered from claustrophobia. And there were times where he was just like, you got to get this off me. Sure. And then it segued into something more, and he became the character.
He started doing the twitch, and he started to play the
out of his own head to do it.
It was cool. So then we went to the final 3, which was the bee,
the peacock, and the monster.
Which I think we all kind of love the monster.
I think the monster just was able to go the full length, give significant hints, but nobody had a clue who it was.
But in the monster's defense, he also had the least form-fitting outfit. So it was very hard to get a gauge of his body type.
Fair.
Some people are like, oh, it's CeeLo Green. And like, well, it could be CeeLo Green or it could be a Olympic wrestler or something, because his body shape was completely hidden. So we'll go right to, what was third place?
Third place was the Bee.
The Bee took third place, who
they all nailed it, being Gladys Knight.
And a freaking living legend on stage singing. I did call out at one point that I noticed that they removed the mouth part of her mask.
Right.
Because the original, when she first did it, they had a mesh over her mouth, and she said that it was too hard for her to sing and such to her.
Too hard to project.
So the costume people pulled it, and she was able to do that. But even then, she was admitting that being in the Bee costume was difficult.
It was hard for her. She is a true performer. She feeds off of being able to connect to her audience.
Eye contact, and I see you, you see me, and I'm singing this song to you.
Right.
Not just to the audience, but to you as an individual. I want to make an eye contact to as many people as possible. And that is a kind of a lost art.
Right.
But again, old man waves his cane, like that is something that's lost. There's a lot of people that...
She was dramatic, and she was asked, why did you want to do this? And she even said that you should always be pushing yourself to do something, because you will always learn something from it. And she was fantastic, and I hope from this she taught or reached out to children in theory. Hey, this was a family-oriented show that families could sit here and watch it. Yep. Now that whole new generation knows what Gladys Knight sounds like.
Well, Keenan was on as a special guest.
Right.
And he made the joke of, as the only black guy up here, or the only representative of color, but at the same time, like...
You've touched every one of my...
She is a staple
family.
in...
Yeah.
I don't say... Even just minority culture in general.
Right.
But, like, in the... I don't want to say African-American. I always hate that term. In American culture.
Okay.
As an American icon for minorities, she... is an
living
icon.
legend.
She's a living legend.
Living legend.
And
not,
but even to myself, like I grew up listening to her music too. Like a voice is a voice, and I don't care what color it's attached to. A voice is a voice, and holy crap, the fact to be able to see Gladys Knight out there just singing modern poppy songs,
Hearing
and
Chandelier by Sia,
and do new stuff is
Miley Cyrus. It was great.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus of all things. Like, and she's out there just screaming out, came in like a wrecking ball. Like, okay, this is amazing.
So
number two
was Donny Osmond, which kind of I was 100% up until 3 weeks ago. I knew it was Donny Osmond.
We both said it was going to be Donny Osmond, and then we got the Neil Patrick Harris bug.
And it started to make sense. I was like, maybe it could be. And then he came out. It was definitely Donny Osmond, and he was, while doing this show, flying back and forth to Vegas, because he's on Vegas Strip with his partner, his sister Marie.
And it's funny because my mom sent me a message 2 weeks ago that she lives out in Arizona, and she's like, hey, guess what? Your father and I are going to take a road trip up to Vegas. It's only a couple-hour drive, so it's no big deal. But we're going to take a road trip up to Vegas. One of my bucket list items is to go see Donny and Marie perform. And that got in my head of, no, there's no way he's doing Vegas and going from Cali to Vegas, which is not a terrible ride, but still inconvenient. You have to go to the airport, do your thing, fly to Vegas, fly back and forth. And he was doing it. He was performing his show and then doing all the stage and prep work as the peacock for that.
So,
and then our winner, the monster.
None
of us You had it. You were guessing.
I had, again,
and you
he was a
swayed.
lot like Rumor Willis, where he was in, like, chat rooms is the wrong word, but at least in some of the articles I had read and people that had, like, throwing out ideas and thoughts of what they were, T-Pain was on the list. But it was just so well done that he was the one that came out, and he was the one that was just like, people don't consider me a singer because he came into the scene as an auto-tuner.
Yeah. And he pushed the auto-tune thing, and that's when he stepped into the business, into the game, he calls it. But he came into his career using auto-tune, and after that wave kind of went away and people was like, oh, this is garbage. We can make a barking dog and a meowing cat make music.
Right.
You're nothing.
But damn, can that man
Dude
sing.
can sing. I was watching you and your goosebumps on your arm was just
when
all over,
he
like,
sung Stay With Me,
Yeah.
it was moving. Like, obviously the judges kind of ham it up, but it was a good song choice. And I think another part of that is he went with major song choices.
For sure. He knew his range. And that's one thing I've again, as the music guy, there's some people that was singing songs that was outside their range or just not popular enough.
Yeah.
Like, it's like bad karaoke night where you're just
right.
like, oh God, this guy's going to try to sing Living on a Prayer. Like, Jesus. Like, you're either going to nail it or it's going to be an absolute shit show.
Right.
And for T-Pain to get a list of songs that highlighted his voice, that he wasn't fighting against, but singing with, and be able to just let him go. Let him belt out, dude. Dude, you got pipes. Sing. Just shut up and sing. And he won. He well deserved. Super surprised. I get the concept of the show.
Yeah.
A lot of people, again, we talked about it before, of what's the point? There's no prize money. There's a goofy trophy. No big deal. Like, there's no real interest behind it. It is a trap. It's an entertainment trap. But if you look past that and just look at the sheer fun of
some of those
B-list
people came
celebrities.
out at B-list celebrities, but some of those people came out and sung, and they were like, this was something I always wanted to do. Like, who in their right mind could sit here and not be like, if I were given the opportunity to do something that I don't have the courage to do using my own face, put a fucking mask on and go do it.
Let's look at one of the surprisings for me. What was one of your, like, most surprising?
Margaret Cho.
Margaret Cho had some pipes, and you don't think of her as a singer.
Poodle.
Margaret Cho as a poodle singing, and she had some pipes too. She wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
For me, it was Ricky Lake.
Yeah.
Ricky Lake surprised me. Like,
Ricky Lake didn't surprise me only because I was a big Hairspray fan.
That's fair, but Ricky Lake was dropped off the face of the planet.
Oh yeah.
She was in the news because unfortunately her husband passed away, so I get that. But then the reasoning for her taking the Raven, a symbol of death and rebirth, and to go into basically take this traumatic event in her life and spin it into a positive showpiece of, I'm going to sing, I'm going to live my life, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to sing songs, and I'm going to be out there. That, to me, was the kicker of that's why the show is around.
Right.
Like, we forget that some of these celebrities are people, too, and we get so wrapped up in their life that we forget that, we forget they're people. We forget that they also have problems. Oh, more money, more problems is this. Some of these people, especially these B-listers, aren't that rich.
Right.
Like, they're living life. But to see them have struggles and to be able to relate and to grab on and be like, no, I get that. I understand. I understand nervousness.
Makes
I understand
them human.
I understand claustrophobia. Like,
right.
It's freaking NSYNC. Like, who doesn't know of NSYNC? But for Joey Fatone to be like, no, I was claustrophobic. It's scary being in there, and it's uncomfortable, and I had to push through to be an entertainer. We do forget sometimes that, yeah, sure, they make a lot of money and they do stuff, but it's not about the money. Like, money comes and goes.
Right.
So, anyway, that was our wrap-up for The Masked Singer. Again, if you just skipped by and didn't listen to this part because you're still watching it, continue on. I'm actually looking forward to season 2. Should they do it?
If they do it.
I'm very curious to see what kind of stars they end up getting. Was it going to be big stars or was it going to be more B-listers? I kind of like the B-listing.
I think they'll get bigger stars because, I mean, it's just like Dancing with the Stars.
You get
Dancing with
bigger
the
and
Stars
bigger?
when it first came out was definitely B-listers. Now they still do B-listers.
The only thing you have to be dangerous about is like all the athletes were eliminated early, but it's still kind of fun to see Terry Bradshaw and Antonio Brown belting out some, because Antonio Brown wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible.
But he was just the worst one.
He's the worst one, but he's the worst one of...
Right.
Like Aretha Franklin not Aretha Franklin. Gladys Knight. Gladys Knight beat him.
Yeah.
Like, I will take that.
I was on a stage with Gladys Knight and I got beat, and she beat my ass.
I got beat by Gladys Knight. Mic drop. Boom.
Fair.
With that being said, this will conclude this week's episode of Gray Muzzle Geekery. Hope you all enjoyed. As always, I am Dusty Red.
And I am Dusty White.
And as I said before, we may know a little bit more, but we sure as hell don't know any better. Have a good night. Thank you for listening to another episode of Gray Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White. You can send your questions and comments to us at graymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at graymuzzlegeek. We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. A special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme, and if you like what you heard, find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or purchase it directly from his Bandcamp page.